Horror films in 1977 brought us one of the best adaptations of Bram Stoker's Dracula and a Dario Argento masterpiece. 1978 brings us a horror film Roger Ebert called A Vile Bag of Garbage, a more than competent Roger Corman Jaws ripoff, and perhaps the greatest zombie and slasher movies ever made. As we truck along with our year-by-year breakdown, we present to you the 10 best horror films of 1978. The villain in Long Weekend is none other than Mother Nature herself, who toys with her prey as playfully and maniacally as any villain in a slasher movie. In the way elements combine to work against our protagonist, the film is like a proto-Final Destination, but far more diligently configured, and with a mounting psychological intensity that eventually hits fever pitch. The tension and uproar build to a psychological conclusion, in which menace radiates from virtually everything around the characters. In Long Weekend, the villain has an almighty ubiquity, present in tiny bugs, to beasts in the water, and birds in the sky. When one of the terrified characters hopelessly waves a gun around, they have everything and nothing to point at. It is a breathless conclusion to a masterpiece in minimalist horror. A traveler forces himself upon a musician and his wife and uses the aboriginal magic he has learned, which includes, among other things, the ability to bring about another's death by using a certain kind of shout to displace his host. The Shout is a wonderfully strange and beguiling piece of offbeat cinema that combines the sensibility of surrealist Eastern European film with Australian mysticism and English whimsicality to create a uniquely sinister yet often peculiarly funny one-off work that continues to be well worth investigating. A ventriloquist is at the mercy of his vicious dummy, Fats, while he tries to renew a romance with his high school sweetheart. Magic is a psychological horror tale at its core. Fats is never actually alive in the sense that his dummy body is inanimate. He exists only within his owner's delusional mind. It's rather similar to an episode of The Twilight Zone, The Dummy, in a few ways. So if you recall that popular episode, then you might have an idea of how this movie was handled. While Fats is never actually alive, you'll find yourself forgetting this fact at times. Despite being an inanimate doll, Fats truly steals the show. It's amazing how frightening he can be. He never actually moves on his own, save for one scene where the dummy operator screws up, yet he becomes such an entirely separate character from his owner that you discover yourself finding Fat scary and his owner not, despite them being the same person. This inexpensively made Texas Chainsaw-inspired trash classic, loosely based on a true story, is one of those movies that grows on you over the years. Once upon a time, this was one of those controversial 70s movies that was causing a huge stir during its release when TV programs and news shows were all aflutter over screen violence and misogyny. The opening 30 minutes is in a class all its own, but quickly deteriorates into a half-and-half police procedural and Hardy Boys mystery combo, with an occasional sprinkle of sleaze. It's quite well made for what it is, but most may be disappointed that the remaining hour never matches up to the opening reel or two. Still, that opening half delivers on the promise of the film's title, which is ultimately responsible for the film's everlasting notoriety.
Lord, you know I'm coming home. Yes, I'll be there in the morning.
In the wake of Steven Spielberg's Jaws in 1975 came countless man vs. nature flicks, with everything from whales to ants having us mere humans running for the hills. Joe Dante's B-movie classic Piranha is considered one of the best imitators, primarily because of its tongue-in-cheek approach and its deliberately campy writing and casting. The Jaws video game appearance was a nice touch as well. And let's all take a moment to appreciate the tagline. Then you were shocked by the great white shark. Now you are at the mercy of 1,000 jaws.
Ow! Did you get bit? Ouch! Ow! Dad! Stay back! Stay back!
I Spit on Your Grave, aka Day of the Woman, follows a New York City writer who heads up to a secluded cabin in the woods to write her first novel. While there, she is heartlessly ravaged by 4 country boys and left for dead. Surviving the assault, she carefully plots and implements horrific bloody revenge against her attackers. Needless to say, the film was widely panned and discredited upon its release. But the film does have its admirers, including this channel right here. Those willing to defend the film do so on the grounds that the picture is as relentless as the brutal acts that it is attempting to portray. Raw, bloody, and unflinching. Does that make it a good movie? Hard to say. But a list such as this would certainly feel incomplete without it. You can debate its ranking on the list in the comments below.
Stop bleeding! It won't stop bleeding!
Everyone always associates George Romero with his zombie flicks, but according to the late director himself, he always maintained that the dark character study Martin is his favorite work. Martin is a young man who believes that he's actually an aged vampire who must drink blood in order to live. Since he has no fangs, Martin must resort to razor blades to draw blood. A regular caller to a local radio talk show, Martin is encouraged by the ratings-conscious host to persist in his vampiric behavior. Despite his random bloodletting, no one takes Martin too seriously, except his grandfather, who knows all too well that a vampire curse has befallen the boy.
Sometimes I think they're really gonna catch me and hurt me or even kill me.
Yeah, I've seen that in the movies. People trying to stop your kind.
In this elaborate remake of the 1956 horror classic, which, of course, is based on the novel The Body Snatchers by Jack Finney, mysterious pods begin to grow and invade San Francisco, where they replicate the residents into emotionless beings one body at a time. Emotionally stirring, visually striking, and having not aged a day, Invasion of the Body Snatchers cries out for individuality in a skewed, nightmarish, totalitarian reality. The results are as squirmingly potent in
insert current year here
as they no doubt were in 1978. Whereas the original film was a Cold War allegory, this film is an allegory of the loss of self in the modern world, and it succeeds on every possible level. It is a work that is of its time, ahead of its time, and of all time. Perhaps contrary to popular opinion, Dawn of the Dead is rather superior to George Romero's predecessor, the also brilliant Night of the Living Dead, by a small margin, but still superior. Dawn was made 10 years after Romero's first foray in the zombie terrain, and the filmmaker decided to change things up. It drops all the characters and settings of the original, which if you've seen Night is no real surprise. It picks up at a point where the zombie apocalypse is very quickly growing out of control, despite the apparent containment of the epidemic at the end of the first film. Moving from shock horror to more of an action horror vibe, along with plenty of dark comedy and satire, Dawn's famous shopping mall setting gave Romero plenty of ammunition for more of his patented observations on the non-zombie real world. Well, the technically non-zombie real world anyway.
What the hell are they?
They're us, that's all. There's no more room in hell.
While it's often wrongly credited as the first ever slasher movie, there's no denying that Halloween was the first to really nail it, and the one that inspired the endless stream of low-budget slashers that followed it. A stream that would flow right through to the present day. Its simple premise, a babysitter stalked by a faceless, unstoppable killer, made it easy for the viewer to relate, and as such, made it terrifying to the teenage audiences that came in droves to see it. Simply put, Halloween changed horror cinema forever. In fact, as a historical milestone that single-handedly shaped and altered the future of an entire genre, it's downright transcendent. Once again, thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to let us know your favorite horror film of the year in the comments section below.